The Fellowship has a way, like, it has a different feel. You know what I'm talking about?
Are you saying a different feel than the other two books?
Yes,
Yes, it
yeah.
does. It's my favorite, actually.
Yeah. I think so, because I think because you feel like you go on a journey. It's like very linear. It's like it follows. It's very Frodo-centric. It follows Frodo the whole way,
Pretty
right?
much, yeah. Fellowship is, yeah. There's something about it. I love the whole work. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But of the three, for some reason, I don't know why, but the Fellowship just always was my favorite. Yeah, just because it's like there's just
You know what it is? Okay.
it's more Hobbit centric. It's more magical than the other ones
Yeah.
are more man history war heavy.
Yeah.
And none of that is in this first book. Not that I don't like man history war, but the first book is more elves magic, like
Yeah, I mean,
Lothlorien.
there's magic, but it's more like the other books are way darker.
Yeah.
Like I always so in my mind, like in my mind with a lot of things, right? But particularly with Lord of the Rings, I always like have a color I associate with each book,
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
and green is what I associate
With
with
Fellowship.
Fellowship.
Me too.
Brown is what I associate with the Two Towers, and
Okay.
then black is what I associate with.
That's so
With
funny. That's so funny. I'm like green, not brown, but kind of dark red. See that?
Yeah.
It's in the same region. Two Towers is kind of a dark red, like a muddy red, like maybe a brownish red,
Yeah.
kind of a blood red, mud red,
Right.
and then black for the Return of the King. But of course, it's only because of the Mordor aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the Mordor, but the brown to me is like, and when I say brown, it's not like it's like a
Right.
wheat, like because again, it's
Oh.
more to me, it's more like Rohan, even though like
Oh, the
there's
golden brown of the Rohirrim or something.
yeah,
Wheat fields and stuff.
and like they're like the Frodo's going through, like Frodo and Sam are going through the dead marshes, and it just seems like
Oh right, yeah, okay, I see that. And then
you're
Fangorn Forest is kind of
kind of
it's
like
dark.
dying.
It's not pretty like Lothlorien. It's a little bit
Yeah,
darker and browner, I think, than
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's
yeah. I see
it's
that.
a brown book, yeah,
That's interesting.
you
It's a
know.
brown book.
So yeah, that's what But we've like basically treated the Fellowship like a book club,
Yeah.
right? So and we've really like sat and hyper analyzed a lot of it,
Yeah.
and like the thing that I learned is that much like a really, really cool painting, right? That's not photorealistic, but it's like an interpretation. It's like you have to look at at the Fellowship as a painting, because there are holes and like inconsistencies all over the place, right?
Or
But
I mean that's debatable, but there's potential inconsistencies or
yeah. I mean, but you know what I'm saying? Like
questions. When
yeah,
you
there's
zoom
questions.
in, you realize, oh, this is a human being did this, and sometimes things seem like questionable.
Right. And in a way, like the metaphor of like of the distance we've talked about before, like
Right.
you have to look at the Fellowship for sure. We'll see like what happens with the Two Towers and the Return of the King at a distance. You look at it as this beautiful piece of
Yeah.
literature, of art,
Are you saying
and
it kind of killed some of the enchantment for you when you zoomed in so close?
yeah, a little bit.
A little bit?
I mean, it's still there. It's still there. You know what I'm
Right.
talking about? But you go in like as a different mindset. Like like what are we going to discuss? Like, is there, is there some little, is there some angle that we can pull out, right?
Exploit or
Exploit that
pick
hasn't
this
been
part,
exploited
pick this apart.
that hasn't been exploited by 8 million like
Other people.
other people that. So like um and like I said, the enchantment hasn't been killed. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But I don't like reading. I didn't like reading the Fellowship from an analytical point. I like reading it from a purely like a what's the word
Right.
I'm looking for? Like a visceral point. I don't know if
Yeah,
that
or
you know.
emotional, or just like
Yeah, yeah,
an enchantment. I mean, I find the book very enchanting, and I feel the same way. Like zooming in like that, picking apart every, or thinking more about it. I think in the long run, I'm glad we did it, and because I feel like I know it better more now, and I actually probably respect it even more than I
yeah,
did
yeah, absolutely.
after having critically analyzed it or whatever for the better part of a year. Um, but yeah, but like while doing it, I'm like, I'm kind of, you're like you said, like looking for angles and crevices and things to kind of pick apart and exploit, and just kind of, you almost feel like you're doing it a disservice, or like you're being discourteous toward this masterpiece that you've always loved. You're kind of like
Yeah.
treating it like something that you can mock, or
What is
ridicule, or
what is the familiarity breeds contempt? It's not that, but it
it's a little bit
like
like that.
yeah, but there it's not like that because like it holds up pretty well. You know
It
what I'm
holds up
talking about?
amazingly.
Yeah,
It's funny because here's two guys that go through a book chapter by chapter for again the better part of a year, and here's a guy, Tolkien, who wrote this almost like a half a century ago or more,
yeah, more than
and
half a
it's
century
still
ago. Yeah,
holding up to our scrutiny, our mockery, and it's still impressing us after all these years. I
I
mean,
mean, we're not mocking it. Come
I,
on.
I mean, not in
We're ribbing it. We're gently poking it.
gently poking it.
Yeah,
We're laughing with it, not at it. Yes.
you
But
know,
no, I'm no less impressed by the achievement, and
yeah,
we
right.
haven't even really scratched the surface with the depth of the mythologies and Silmarillion, and then the rest of the story and all the. I mean, we don't have. I don't particularly have the skill to assess the languages, the
Right,
Elven
right.
and all this stuff. I mean, it's so rich, so deep, so it's an accomplishment. And I mean,
But
obviously it's globally famous, and
right, right.
if it weren't the accomplishment that we make it out to be, then it wouldn't be so widely respected, revered, admired, blah
Well,
blah
you
blah.
know what though? I read this, and I try to read Lord of the Rings once a year because there's particularly around the fall, you
Mm,
know,
yeah,
because I've always felt there's a comfort there where it's like, oh, I'm coming back here. I know what to expect. It's like watching like your favorite TV series
mm,
when you want to relax, when you want to just kind of
right.
feel good. I mean,
It's like you know what happens next, but just the process is relaxing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And like you still pick up little things here and there and stuff like that. But it's like looking at at a photo book, where it's like,
yeah,
oh, okay, and it gets the pictures seem more and more dated, but it's always comforting
yeah.
and
I see.
so
Yeah, totally. The last thing I'll say, I mean, I don't have any final words really, except to say, like, yeah, I mean, we did kind of try to pick apart the speculative Tolkienism aspect of the show. We were trying to speculate, not necessarily to pick it apart or to point out inaccuracies or something, but just to speculate about, well, what would have happened if this happened, or what would have,
right,
you
right.
know, could this have possibly been done otherwise? And I'm amazed by how many times we put forth, you know, an alternative version or an alternative turn of events, and then usually we came upon like, well, actually it's probably the best way is the way that it ended up being for the most
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
The one that I still think maybe was probably the idea that the ring could have gone due east from Rivendell over the Misty Mountains and then down the Anduin.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That still seems like a little bit of a better shot,
Yeah, I
but
think so. Yeah,
but
but
that's but you know that's
but
but
that's a
I remember why once again Tolkien probably has a justification for everything, because that road is a commonly traversed road because it was
Yeah.
the road that Gloin took
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
to Rivendell and was going back by that road. So it would have been a watched road probably.
Oh yeah, we talked about that. Like
We
you
talked
would
about
have
that.
to, you'd have to
Okay.
smuggle Frodo through there. You
Right. You
know.
put him in a cot.
I know. It's like
Anyway, so it's hard
well,
sometimes
we have no rings here.
to bring out your dead.
I know. No, but again, like I think I mean, do you think that Tolkien wanted to like take like the Fellowship through the places that he wrote about in the Silmarillion or like in his history to kind of showcase his work? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense. Like
Well,
we're
it's not really the same landscape, really.
no, but you've got like
The Misty Mountains are
Eregion.
there. Hmm?
Yeah, the Misty Mountains, but you've got Moria and Eregion, right? Like
Oh, right.
like I've written about these in the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
I need to put my people down there. Like I need to
Right.
take.
Right.
Again, I mean, I don't think that's what the
Yeah.
case is, but
Yeah. I mean, I think when he writes in the Akalabeth, when he writes about Numenor,
yeah,
it's a little bit more about the Second Age Rings of Power stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, most of the land from the Silmarillion kind of got sunk, I think.
right.
Uh,
Or do you think he wanted just to like stay as far away from where the Harfoots were? And you know,
yeah, I don't know. I think. I mean, I think. Look, I think Tolkien. He was probably autistic. He wrote this amazing like mythology in the Silmarillion when he was young,
right, right,
and it was probably so weird and so unmarketable that he probably would have never been able to use it had he not, or he probably would have never been able to use it. He wrote The Hobbit, and it was disconnected from the original Silmarillion
you're
mythology.
right, right.
And then fortunately, he wrote The Lord of the Rings, which was his masterpiece, and it bridged that world between The Hobbit and the Silmarillion.
Right.
So it took the Hobbit information and was like, oh, okay, well, actually, it's all part of the same world, and here's this masterpiece that's going to show you how it's going to be as light as the Hobbit in some ways and as deep as the Silmarillion in other ways.
Yeah, yeah.
It kind of like reconciles the whole scheme. And but what my point is sure, maybe that Silmarillion stuff is unmarketable and would have never sold or been published at all had he not written the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings.
Right, right.
But because that Silmarillion stuff existed, it made the Lord of the Rings feel so much deeper.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's like the one thing that I mean, Tolkien is the the poster child for writing a good backstory for any kind of story you could
And
write.
quite a backstory it was. He's like, in the
Yeah, yeah.
beginning,
No,
there was
that's like the one thing that, again,
Iluvatar.
that's the one thing that is amazing about the Lord of the Rings is the fact that like it and why it feels real is because there's background, there's history
Yeah. There's a whole
everywhere.
there's a
Yeah,
whole like myth creation myth
yeah.
that spawns the whole universe. So
Yeah, and it gives it it gives it a consistency. There's nothing
mm-hmm.
like the elves act the way the elves act because of how they acted in the Silmarillion or
Yeah.
the like the dwarves and elves like have issues not because they have issues in the Lord of the Rings, but they've had issues for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
it's and the hobbits and like everything has like a reason, and that's why it feels so rich
Right.
and so like
And the other thing that makes it rich is the language. And again, I'm not like a linguistics scholar so much, so I don't have a whole lot of skill in addressing this. But all I can say is from a more experiential interpretation. Like when I read words, even on this page, like Eamon Mule, Amon Law, Tolbrandir, these sound like actual places.
Yeah, yeah,
And maybe
yeah.
it's, I mean, it's because sometimes, like, I've tried to read other fantasy, and it's
Oh,
usually
dude.
the names, the proper names in other fantasy novels just don't sound as cool. They don't sound as
Dude,
real.
they sound made up. They
Right.
sound
They sound made
it
up.
was like
These, because he has a linguistic background, he knows how to make these names sound related to each other.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a consistency, like you said.
Like
Yeah.
like like Ator,
Like
like you know, like
Krull
yeah,
smash the
crawl and like nothing.
Borthon smash
Yeah,
the head of Morkoth.
yeah,
Well,
like no, nothing makes any sense,
it
and the
doesn't make any
fact,
sense, but it just sounds like a derivative of Tolkien usually, and
yeah.
just not as
Well,
impressive.
well, because of the language, what again? What's fascinating is the fact that Baradur, right?
Hmm.
It means Dark Tower. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like that's
From an etymological standpoint,
yeah, but it's like and like all of the other languages that come out of Mordor are like
they
derivatives
sound that
of that
way.
language. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And they all kind
great.
of sound like when they read the Ring poem, and it's like Ashnag, it just sounds kind of creepy.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, it's great. Love it, love it. You know.
Sweet. Cool.
All right.
All right. Well, we did it. Book one down the drain, or not down the drain, in the bag.